management, and advertisers.
All right, welcome back. It is Pushing the Limits. It is a, 22-hour break. I did say welcome back. We had a 22-hour break. We're back. Welcome to the show, everybody. Happy Tuesday. You could be watching on the Occupy Democrats Network, the Washington Press Network, of course, the FMAM dial. We're all over the place, and we're glad that you make us a part of your show. We got a lot to discuss today. Some politics, some just basic news, some court cases coming up here in a few minutes. Staunch Trump supporter, Republican from the David Pollock show. David Pollock's going to join us. Why he has such a huge issue with Joe Biden pardoning his son. We will talk about that. We're also going to get into the Daniel Penny case. If you don't know this case, the case of the chokehold, the strong-arm chokehold from this guy who served, who killed this man on the subway who was acting irrationally and screaming at people. Why I think Daniel Penny should be going to jail. So we'll talk about that coming up after my interview with David Pollock. But I want to start with this. The right seems to be losing their mind over Joe Biden pardoning his son, Hunter. And the coverage over the past 24 hours has been very strange and odd. And the things they are saying about Donald Trump, even on Fox News, is kind of crazy. And I wanted to give you just a few examples and have some fun with this because it's crazy. So I think Jesse Waters is a talentless buffoon and a chipmunk who's on Fox News as a talking head for right-wing propaganda network, Fox Noise. I want you to listen to what Jesse Waters said yesterday about Trump's promises. Have a listen to this.
At least Trump doesn't make promises he knows he's going to break. You might not agree with what he does, but when he says he's going to pardon Jan 6ers, he'll probably do it. Recess his cabinet, he'll probably do it. Fire the FBI director. He's done it once. He'll do it again.
Really? He doesn't break promises? Remember when he said he's going to build a wall and Mexico's going to pay for it? He ran on two things. He ran on that in 2016, and he said he was going to hire a special prosecutor to go after Hillary Clinton. Do you remember that? I guess Jesse Waters must have Alzheimer's. He must be in the bunker. He also said the war in the Ukraine now is going to be over within 24 hours. Yeah, let's see how that pans out. But yeah, Donald Trump keeps all of his promises. Are you effing kidding me? It's insane. Listen to Caroline Leavitt. She's going to be the next White House press secretary. She's done this show before. I want you to listen to what she said about Donald Trump yesterday.
And what President Trump has that no other candidate who has ever run for office in modern history has is authenticity. And he tells the truth. And you might not like the truth all the time, but he tells it. And when he says he's going to do something, he delivers on that promise. And what President Trump has.
Did she just say Donald Trump has authenticity? Did I hear that right? I'm sorry. Can we play that one more time? Is that okay? Can we play Caroline? I might have misheard Caroline.
What President Trump has that no other candidate who has ever run for office in modern history has is authenticity. And he tells the truth. And you might not like the truth all the time, but he tells it. And when he says he's going to do something, he delivers on that promise.
Interesting. Yeah, because when you think about authenticity and telling the truth, the first person I think about is always Donald Trump. This woman is such a shill for Donald. It's so absurd. It's so ridiculous. By the way, Caroline Leavitt, if you look this up, she deleted some of her tweets. She was praising Mike Pence after January 6th for, quote, doing the right thing. Then all of a sudden she deleted that tweet. She's deleted tweets like that, praising the Capitol police officers on January 6th. This woman is a complete liar and a fraud, and she's going to be your next press secretary. And she says President Trump is Mr. Authenticity, the guy who wakes up in the morning with 8 layers of orange makeup, puts on his girdle and his hair transplants. Mr. Authenticity. Holy smokes. Listen to what Sean Hannity said yesterday about Fox News and his show.
On this channel, on this show, we tell you the truth. We've been right about Richard Jewell going back to the beginning. We were right about UVA. We were right about Duke Lacrosse. We were right about Freddie Gray in Baltimore. We were right about Ferguson, Missouri. We were right about Obama's radicalism. We were right about vetting Kamala Harris, which they wouldn't do. We were right about Russia collusion. We were right also about FISA abuse. And I can keep going on. And they're always wrong. They peddle lies and conspiracy theories for a living.
Interesting, because last I checked, the network that was sued and lost almost $1 billion was Fox News. Sorry, am I wrong on that? Were you right about the Dominion voting machines? Were you right about the 2020 election? I could name a laundry list of all the conspiracy theories and lies that Sean Hannity tells on a regular basis. But no, they always tell the truth. And it's the other side that peddles the conspiracy theories. Are you effing kidding me? These people are losing their mind. And then I want you to listen to what Ted Cruz said on the Sean Hannity show yesterday about Mika Brzezinski and Joe Scarborough. Now, listen, I am not defending Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski. In fact, I said I'll never watch that show again. Those guys, they're both so two-faced. I will never defend them again because remember they went to Mar-a-Lago and they kissed the ring of Donald Trump. But if you want to talk about somebody who is the biggest two-faced douchebag scumbag, it's Cancun Ted Cruz. Remember back in the day when Cruz was running against Donald Trump? And do you remember when Trump claimed that members of Ted Cruz's family killed John F. Kennedy Jr.? Do you remember the statements and the picture that Donald Trump put up basically calling Ted Cruz's wife ugly? All those things. And then Ted Cruz said he was incompetent. He was a habitual liar. Can't get him anywhere near the White House. Ted Cruz said all these things that were actually truthful about Donald Trump. And the last, 7 years, 8 years, he's kissed the ring of Donald Trump, but yet Ted Cruz is the guy that wants to attack Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski. Have a listen to this.
And then it goes further. Then you have Joe and Mika go to Mar-a-Lago and kiss the ring and suck up to Donald Trump. You can't make that story up.
Well, I'm not even sure they were kissing the ring. I think they were kissing a little bit lower than that.
Yeah, they were kissing a little bit lower than that. Ted Cruz, the guy who flies out to Cancun when they are in a state of emergency, like many other MAGA Republicans without any backbone at all and no moral compass, has sided behind Donald Trump every single day, failing to criticize him for anything. And the only reason why is because Donald Trump is the leader of the Republican Party and, again, will soon be the leader of the free world. These people have lost their minds. These are just sound clips in the last 24 hours that I'm playing. You got Caroline Leavitt, who says that President Donald Trump, or the president-elect, he has more authenticity than any other modern-day president, which is a joke, by the way. When she talks about authenticity, are they talking about the Trump Bibles? I'm just curious. When she talks about authenticity, are we talking about his trading cards, his tan, his hair, his teeth, his marriage? What does she mean by authentic? What is authentic about Donald Trump? And then you have Sean Hannity saying, we always tell the truth. And they're the ones on the left that peddle the lies and conspiracy theories. Meanwhile, Fox News is the network that had to pay almost $1 billion. $1 billion because they lied about the election. They lied about Dominion voting machines. But yet Donald Trump goes on his high horse on Fox News, says that, we're the truthful guys. We're the ones that are honest. Are you kidding me? You have Jesse Waters going on the air yesterday. Trump doesn't make promises he knows he's going to break. Well, how about with every marriage he's had? Let's start there. If you want to start with Donald Trump's personal life, till death do us part. He's literally cheated on every woman he's ever been with, including having raw dog sex with a porn star 2 weeks after Barron was born. I would say that might be part of the reason why Melania Trump not only doesn't want to be the first lady, she doesn't want to be anywhere near the White House. She doesn't want to be in the same zip code as her orange orangutan husband. But yeah, he keeps all of his promises, right? The guy literally ran on two things as he was elected president in 2016. He ran on two major things. We're going to build a wall. Mexico's going to pay for it. We're going to hire a special prosecutor to go after Hillary Clinton. So again, some of these networks, particularly those on Fox News, are losing their mind. All right. So without further ado, I do want to get other people's take on the Joe Biden situation with Hunter Biden and the pardon. So I figured what better person to do that with from the David Pollock show. My friend David Pollock joining us right now on the show. David, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us again. How are you?
I'm doing well, brother. I love coming in here and having an answer for everybody that you're angry with. This is fantastic.
Well, I will say this. You have a very professional-looking studio, and I really appreciate that. I'm working on that myself, so
Yes.
I'm very jealous of that. So I'll definitely start there. Anyway,
I'll give you some
David,
pointers. It's easy.
I could use that.
Yeah.
Anyway, David, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. A lot of different topics that I want to get to with you, but I want to get your take to start on the Joe Biden pardon of Hunter Biden. Do you have a problem with it? Because I don't know your take on it. I would assume that you might, but what are your thoughts on this pardon?
Yeah, I've been having this conversation a lot lately with a lot of different people. I'm not surprised that he pardoned Hunter. I actually don't really. So I'm being careful. I'm choosing words. It's like this. It's his son. Of course, he's going to pardon him. So for anybody who thinks it was like the worst thing in the world for him to pardon his son, I think anybody probably in that position would have done the same thing. Now, I said this on my show last night, actually, and my co-host, who's actually a real life puppet, my co-host said, well, where do you draw the line then? Like, what crimes would you pardon your child for? What about murder? What about rape? And he started going down this list because he disagreed with my opinion. He says he wouldn't have pardoned his child. And I said, well, look, depending on the crime. But in this instance, here we have a conviction for possession of a firearm, making false statements, gun charges, tax evasion.
While he was drugged out.
Regardless, those crimes, yes, you could take the argument while he was drugged out. So look, if he's going to pardon his son for that, I don't think it's shocking. First of all, I don't think anybody's surprised that he pardoned him, but pardoning him for those crimes. And there's a lot of conservatives who believe the gun charges should never have been brought. They don't like the idea of that about the gun charges lying on an application because they believe that could actually affect a lot of veterans in a negative way because they don't want to admit to marijuana use, for example, when they fill out a weapon application because it's a federal firearm. You're not allowed to use drugs, but in certain states, you're allowed to use drugs to treat PTSD.
Can I ask you about that, David?
Yeah.
Because I agree with you on that one. You'd be hard-pressed to find really any case throughout the country with similar circumstances where they actually press charges against somebody who was drugged out. Important to note, the weapon, while I don't agree with him having the weapon on his person, it is against the law. It was not loaded, and he didn't use it in a crime, which I think is important to note. So I agree with a lot of those Republicans, and I do think a part of this has to be politically motivated. But let me ask you something else now, because I think for the most part we agree on, listen, it's his son, and I don't have a problem with it. Doesn't sound like you have a major problem with it either. There are Republicans and Democrats out there that are saying, well, Joe Biden's a liar and he's a disgrace. Scott Jennings, who I think is just an awful human being, that's another story, calling Joe Biden's a disgrace. He's leaving office as a liar. Here's my take, and I want to know what your thoughts are on this. So Donald Trump won the election. Joe Biden didn't know what was going to happen. We all didn't know. And we all didn't know that Kash Patel is most likely going to be the leader of the FBI.
Oh, I knew.
Okay, well, that you might have known. That's fine.
Right.
But Kash Patel, in multiple interviews in the last 6 months, has literally specifically talked about going after Hunter Biden. Now, my criticism of Joe Biden is this: just don't answer the question. He answered the question and said he would not pardon Hunter. Do I think it's a huge deal? No. He changed his mind. And I think a big part of why he changed his mind is because Kash Patel has talked about how he's going to go after his son. So I don't consider Joe Biden a liar. I think he would have been better off if he just didn't answer the question. But everybody on the right seems to be calling Joe Biden a liar. And I say to myself, well, the hypocrisy is interesting because look at the guy who's going to be the next president. But do you consider Joe Biden a liar for changing his mind?
Well, not for this instance. I don't call him a liar because, look, that was the position. It's interesting because we know that the gun charge and the tax evasion stuff, that's really not the most serious thing that he was being investigated for or could be investigated for. Obviously, there was thoughts that he might have been involved in engaging as a foreign agent. Or he might have been selling things of value, and Joe Biden might have been
was
involved.
Never proven.
No, I'm just saying that's the speculation. Sure. Knowing, and if I'm the president of the United States, knowing that my son pled guilty to a gun charge and a a tax evasion charge, knowing they could also be investigated for something way more serious. Because that was the discussion we had last night. He wasn't going to go to jail. Hunter Biden wasn't going to go to jail. It was a maximum of 10 years for these charges. He wasn't going to go to jail. His sentencing was in a couple weeks. It probably would have been a house arrest, probation. He wouldn't have gone to jail. As a son of a president, the Secret Service issues are the same as they would have been for Trump. It would have been very challenging to put somebody like Hunter Biden in prison.
Right.
So it would have been something outside of jail. And so for Biden to waste a pardon, and by that I mean to face all the scrutiny, because there's Democrats that are upset with this pardon as well, because the Democrats were the party of no one is above the law. Well, if that's true, how do you pardon somebody who pled guilty to a crime? So there's criticism. But if I'm Joe Biden and I know my son can potentially be investigated for something that's very serious that he can go to jail for the rest of his life for, that's where that pardon comes in, which is why I think Joe Biden used it. And I do think the election motivated him to do that, because now he knows, you're right, Kash Patel is going to be the director of the FBI. And we can talk about that in a minute. But at the end of the day, I'm trying to be, I'm trying not to take it too partisan, because I think this is an important discussion to have without going into our political corners, because there's a lot of interesting questions about political prosecutions that we should talk about based on this. But that being said, Joe Biden's Justice Department, arguably, at least from my corner, we believed that the Justice Department has been weaponized against conservatives. That's what we believe. So if you're Joe Biden and you know that your Department of Justice has gone after Donald Trump, has gone after Trump's associates, of course, you're going to think that Donald Trump is going to do the same thing, and you're going to want to protect your son from that. Joe Biden was very clear in his pardon that he felt that the prosecution against his son was politically motivated. And so certainly any subsequent prosecution would be politically motivated. But my question is, and this is the interesting thing to come out of this, does this standard apply then to all perceived political prosecutions?
Well, that's a good question, but I would say that, first of all, and not to beat a dead horse here, but
Sure.
Donald Trump is a 34 count felon.
No, he's
So,
not.
well, he is. He was.
No, he's not
by a
convicted until
jury.
sentenced, and he's not going to be sentenced. So those charges that conviction goes away.
So
the
the
jury
reason why-
recommended a verdict. The verdict was never accepted.
Okay, so the reason why that is going to go away is because Donald Trump is going to be the next president of the United States. That's obvious.
But it should have gone away because it was a bad case.
Okay, well, you can have opinions on whether you think it was a bad case or not, but Donald Trump a jury found that he was guilty of 34 felony counts. That we can get into legal jargon with you.
They recommended a verdict of guilty on those 34 counts, correct? But he's not a felon.
Okay, well, he was convicted on 34 counts.
Wasn't convicted. The jury recommended a verdict. It's
Okay.
important because he's not convicted. He's not a convicted felon. It's important.
Okay. Well, again, I mean, we can go back and get into the weeds of the cases, but the bottom line is, in 4 years from now, there's going to be a sentencing, and Bragg has talked about that.
No, there will not be. That case
that's
goes away
what,
forever.
well, that's what they're trying to do. But if you want to talk about above the law, an adjudicated rapist, a 34, we can argue whether he's a 34 count felon or not. I would say a jury already made their decision, found guilty on 34 felony counts. And we know that there are several other indictments that are going to go away because Donald Trump was elected as the president of the United States. So
but there's a problem with that, though. And look, I understand. I know you don't like President Trump, and I understand that.
It's not about. See, you're right. I don't like Donald Trump.
But we have to. As I'm a lawyer here, so I'm going to take off my legal. Put on my legal hat for a second and put off my emotional hat. There's a problem with these cases not actually being adjudicated to their finality, right? So this Alvin Bragg case in New York, that is never going to be appealed now because it's going to be dismissed. It's going to have to be dismissed because they're not going to delay sentencing 4 years. It's just
because Donald Trump was elected as the president of the United States.
Regardless of why, I think it should have been dismissed because they weren't able to prove the essential elements of the case.
You can think that and have your opinion, but a jury disagreed with you.
Here's my point. But Brian, here's the issue. We're never going to get to know from the appeals court whether or not that conviction was good or not. A lot of lawyers, Democrats and Republicans, believe that conviction would not have stood. Okay, but we're never going to know.
We could believe one way or the other.
Well, but it doesn't matter because none of it is ever going to. Nobody's ever know. It's just.
But
belief.
It doesn't. Right, and that's wrong. That's what I'm trying to say. Well, so when people say above the law, like Hunter Biden is above the law, I want to ask you about some of the pardons that Donald Trump has given. Oh yeah, by the way, his former attorney Matt Schlapp and others, lobbyists that were around Donald Trump, made money off of Donald Trump's pardons. How did they do that? Because they were close to Donald Trump, and these people that were incarcerated hired these people to get clemency from Donald Trump. They were enriched because of Donald Trump's pardons. That's wrong. He also pardoned literally murderers who killed Iraqi civilians. Look at Kushner's father. He was in jail. So we're talking about very serious crimes. And I'm not trying to diminish somebody that is owning a gun illegally, but we all know 99 out of 100 times that would not have been prosecuted. We know that. I'm not saying tax evasion.
99 out of 100 times that stupid business records charge would have been brought. It's never been brought before under the way they brought it. So
that might be true, but why don't I hear from MAGA? I know you don't have a problem with the pardon. I don't have a problem with the pardon, but there's a lot of Republicans out there that do. And I say to myself, where were you when Donald Trump pardoned 144 people? Where were you when he pardoned literally murderers? He pardoned murderers. You can look it up.
But now, can you say I don't have a problem with the pardon? The reason why I quote unquote don't have a problem with the pardon is not because I think what Hunter Biden admitted to doing is not a shame on or stain on the office of the president. It's awful. I don't have a problem with it because the president has a right in the Constitution to pardon whoever he wants for whatever reason. So if the president chooses to pardon somebody, whatever the reason is for doing it, I don't have a problem with it. They have a right to do it. The Constitution gives the president a right to pardon for a reason.
I agree, but David, I don't
give deference in that.
I agree. I hear what you're saying, David, but I have a problem with the president pardoning people and profiting off it, and people around him, lobbyists that are making money off of pardons. That's what we're talking about here.
But the premise of the pardon in general, really, and that's every president. I mean, I think it was Clinton who pardoned his brother-in-law or his brother.
Yes, brother-in-law.
People at the point of the pardon is somebody's committed a crime and been convicted of a crime or potentially could be convicted of a crime, and it's been used ever since George Washington.
I understand the history. I understand, David, what you're talking about.
I'm not going to go into but what I'm saying is to scrutinize one pardon versus another pardon and say, well, this one's bad because of this one is pardon is a pardon. A crime is a crime.
But it's not even about, to me, scrutinizing pardons. Yes, a crime is a crime, but I think there's a difference between pardoning somebody who is a murderer, who murdered people, and pardoning somebody who did some tax evasion and had an illegal gun. There are different fine lines, and I will take it a step further and say again, it's one thing if you pardon your son. It's another thing if you pardon people for financial gain. And we know this for a fact. Donald Trump, lobbyists around him, like the Matt Schlapps of the world, and Donald Trump's former attorney, they profited because they had relationships with Donald Trump, and they took on clients that wanted clemency from Donald Trump. We know this. That's where I have a problem. People should not be profiting.
I believe that you believe that. And I know that.
No, it's true. It's true. It's a fact. Donald Trump's former attorney even admitted to the fact that there were criminals in jail and they hired him.
Which former attorney?
I'm trying to remember his name. I said it yesterday. I don't have it in front of me, but it's one of Donald Trump's former attorneys and Matt Schlapp. And there was another man that was involved with this as well. They took on clients and tried to get them out of prison because of the relationships they had with Donald Trump. And while that might not be illegal, I would like to think that Republicans like yourself would have an issue with that, and you would take issue with that.
Well, like I said, I think the facts of every pardon are unique, and I think there's a lot of things that go into it. The pardon in general is a right of the president, and for whatever reason they want to pardon somebody, that's their right to do. And I apply that standard fairly, whether it's Joe Biden or Donald Trump or Bill Clinton or George Washington. That the Constitution gives you a right to pardon whoever you want for whatever reason, and
well,
that's
we're not
your right to do.
We won't beat a dead horse on that. Yeah. All I will say is when I hear Scott Jennings on CNN, who I just think is a complete clown and just a condescending jerk, when he says, well, Joe Biden's a liar. Now all of a sudden Republicans care about people that tell the truth. I mean, really? I mean, I don't
care that Kareem Jean-Pierre told the press about 100 times.
What she was told.
That he wasn't going to pardon his son. And I believe that Biden didn't think he was going to lose the election. And he didn't need to pardon his son. I believe he wasn't planning on pardoning his son until he had to pardon his son. So am I surprised? No, I can't believe he wouldn't pardon his son and leave his son subject to prosecution. But I do believe, regardless of the pardon, we already saw the special prosecutor refused to dismiss the case and said, just because he's pardoned me, we can't get a conviction. And so I do believe information will come out about what Hunter Biden may or may not have engaged in. I do believe investigations will be brought forward about.
Well, they found nothing. James Comer and Jim Jordan have found nothing. And then they go on their high horse and say, hey, we told you so. This case has absolutely nothing. The gun charge and taxes have absolutely nothing to do with what Comer and Jim Jordan have been talking about. The Republicans have literally found nothing on Joe Biden. They call him the Biden crime family. They've found absolutely nothing on these guys. And I think that's embarrassing. But speaking of finding things, I wanted to ask you, David, about Kash Patel.
Yeah, it's good.
I mean, I had a conversation with Kash Patel a few months ago, and he wanted to charge me $3,000 to come on my show. I told him to go F himself.
That's a deal.
Yeah, this is a guy who sells his boots and his shirts and his hats. And again, Kash Patel, that's what he's about. He's about cash. He's about making money. And this is a guy, while he's a former defense attorney, Kash Patel, you think he's the kind of guy who should be running the FBI when this is a guy who's literally peddled conspiracy theories, whether it be election lies or peddled really any conspiracy that people on the talking about the deep state every day, and how he's going to go after members of the media like myself because we're anti-Donald Trump. This is the guy that you think should be leading the FBI, David?
Yeah, I mean, he's qualified. He's worked as the chief of staff to the Secretary of Defense. He understands the FBI. He was a lawyer for a long time, so he's going to be a great FBI director. And I think he's the FBI director that we need right now, considering Trump's first FBI director. We remember James Comey, and going into Trump's office and recording conversations and setting up the president to bring up an investigation that would occupy half of his term, arguably treasonous. Trump has never had an FBI director that could carry out his initiatives. Now, Trump is elected president by popular vote and the Electoral College. He has the right to select the people to lead his executive branch. It belongs to him. And he believes Kash Patel is the guy to do it. And I think he's qualified, arguably. At a minimum, you have to say he's at least qualified. Now, whether or not you like the things
because he was a defense attorney? What makes him qualified?
He has experience with major government working as chief of staff to the Department of Secretary of Defense under the Trump administration. That's a very high level experience in order to run an organization like the FBI. Right.
Well, there are people high ups in the FBI that would disagree with you on that.
Well, he has more experience than Pete Buttigieg did to lead transportation, as you know. So I mean, you get to pick who you want when you're elected president.
Right, but I will also say Pete Buttigieg doesn't lie and peddle conspiracy theories.
I don't think he lies or peddles conspiracy theories. He believes differently than you.
Okay, well, it's not. So if I said that the earth is flat and you said, Brian, no, the earth is round, would you say, Brian, you're not wrong. You just believe differently from me? Because that's exactly what Kash Patel is doing.
Well, because I think that's fair. Because there are people. No, I'm not a flat earther. I'm looking at a picture of the earth right now and it's round.
You're a flat, but David, you're a nice guy. Yeah. I get what you're saying. People are entitled to their opinions, but they're not entitled to their own facts. Donald Trump did not win the 2020 election, and Kash Patel has
he did not win the election because of the. But anyway, I don't want to go around in circles. But
I don't want to go into that either. But Kash Patel has said he wants to go after members of the media. You don't find that interesting and dangerous that the guy who's probably going to be the leader of the FBI claims that he's going to civilly or legally go after members of the media that claim that Trump didn't win the 2020 election and lied and say that Joe Biden won. You don't find that problematic at all?
I think the way the FBI and the Department of Justice has behaved from 2016 to now is problematic.
Okay, but that's different. Different. We can get into that, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm specifically talking about Kash Patel saying he wants to, just like Donald Trump, by the way, the enemy within, saying he wants to go after members of the media who did not side that Trump won the 2020 election.
I would have to see the full context of those comments.
Well, I mean, they've been playing it nonstop.
Of course, they've been playing it because they're trying to make him look like he's a fringe. But
he is.
But
I'm
really excited about that pick. I think it's the first time in a very long. I was excited about the Matt Gaetz pick for AG. I mean, if you're
hold on a second. You were excited about the Matt Gaetz pick?
100%.
The guy who shows naked women pictures on the House floor to some of his Republican friends, claiming that he banged them. The guy who I think very, very credible had sex with at least one underage girl who paid them in Venmo, who didn't want that.
Those were allegations. He was never charged or convicted of any of those things.
Okay, but here's the bottom line here. Even Republicans said that he was unfit and that he showed
because Republicans don't like the fact that the Speaker of the House was fired because of him. I mean, there's a lot of politics at play there. But that being said, what MAGA wants, what I want, is a cabinet and an executive branch that can deliver on what we view as being the injustices of the last almost 8 years.
So you think the January 6th, speaking of injustices, you think that the January 6th insurrectionists, I'm specifically talking about the people who attacked police officers.
Yeah, they should all be pardoned. And those.
So if you beat a police officer, you're okay with them being pardoned.
No,
What about
no. Let me be clear. Beating the police officer is a crime. The way these people were prosecuted for those crimes, I believe, was in violation of their due process rights. I believe they were illegally held in solitary confinement against their rights. They were subjected to cruel and unusual punishment just because of the nature of the crime they were charged with.
Where's the evidence that they were subjected to cruel and unusual punishment?
They were put in solitary confinement for months at a time, sometimes
not
years.
Not everybody that was
for
prosecuted.
their own protection because they wouldn't get COVID vaccines. I mean, these people were treated like terrorists, worse than terrorists in some instances. I know stories from first-hand accounts of the FBI going to people's homes for nonviolent
Well, here's what I would say to that.
Holding their children at gunpoint in the middle of the night.
Here's what I would say to that.
Yeah.
First of all, don't beat a police officer. Don't physically assault
Other
a police
people
officer.
beat police officers, and they don't have the FBI storming their houses and holding their young children and pregnant wives at gunpoint.
Well,
so
here's what I would say to
I'm
that.
talking about.
Well, here's what I would say to that. This is an extremely unique situation where we had an attempt to overthrow our democracy.
Unique situations,
yes.
Just because the situation is unique, it doesn't mean you throw the Constitution out the window and people's due process rights.
So every single one of those people had an opportunity to defend themselves in the courtroom.
They didn't.
Oh, really? They didn't have attorneys?
They were pulled into biased, very unfair circumstances.
Right. So it was biased. Sorry, my phone's going off.
No, you're good. But look, Joe Biden said, somebody probably saying, that guy's an idiot. Why do you have him on your show? You heard Joe Biden himself talk about Hunter Biden's political prosecution. If that's the standard, arguably, you're right. It was it was a very unusual circumstance.
There is a difference.
It was a political prosecution. And
David, with respect, David, I think there's a big difference between tax evasion and somebody who beats a police officer with his own baton.
I'm not arguing about the action itself. I'm talking about the political nature of the prosecution.
So you think every single one of those people should be pardoned?
If their prosecution was political in nature, if their prosecutions were not consistent with other people who did similar things, then yes, that's a political prosecution. They deserve a pardon because it's not the way, just like Joe Biden said in his pardon, that's not justice. And I agree. The January 6th prosecutions was not justice. I'm not saying what they did was okay and they shouldn't have been charged for it. People who committed crimes should be prosecuted for crimes, but the way they're prosecuted should be consistent with established law, not these uncharacteristic prosecutions where due process was violated.
Again, you'd have to go into a case-by-case basis, but you see, that's not what Donald Trump has said, and that's not what Kash Patel has said. They have made a blatant statement that they are going to be giving pardons to everybody. That's what Donald Trump has said. In fact, he's called them patriots and hostages. And let me tell you something.
And most of them are. Most of them are.
Most of them, the people that attacked police officers are patriots.
Most. There are people who engage in criminal activity who I would not define as being a patriot. But like I said, their prosecutions I have problem with. But there's a lot of people who were just 2,000
people that were prosecuted that day. You would define most of them as patriots?
Yeah, I mean, they were showing up. Look, again, we'd have to go case by case. But a lot of people who were there believed that they were expressing their right to challenge the outcome of the election.
So breaking into the Capitol.
You can't trespass into the Capitol, by the way, because it's the people's house. But going into the Capitol,
destruction of property, defecating on Nancy Pelosi's desk, stealing property.
Right. How many people did that?
Officers.
How many people?
There were at least 500 people. In fact, there are still
500 people beat one police officer.
No, it wasn't. What do you mean one police officer?
No, what I'm saying is how many people did those things?
So first of all, there are still several hundred people behind bars, and the overwhelming majority of those people are those that physically assaulted police officers. 140 officers were sent to the hospital. Some of them lost fingers. As we know, Brian Sitnick died the next day. Several officers committed suicide in the months thereafter.
And several January 6th defendants committed suicide because of the prosecutions against them were so unjust.
Well, you know what? If January 6ers committed suicide after breaking the law, I don't feel sorry for them at all.
You would feel sorry if you knew their stories, like Matthew Perna, who was told he was going to be prosecuted like a terrorist, and he hung himself because he was in his nobody would talk to his family anymore, and he didn't do anything besides walk around a building. So the death sentence is not an appropriate sentence for walking into the Capitol when you're protesting. That is not the appropriate. This is what I'm talking about the violation of due process and cruel and unusual punishment. Overcharging people and making them think they're going to go to the jail for the rest of their lives as a terrorist because they took a picture in the Capitol.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, there's no correlation to that.
First of all, those aren't the criminals that I'm specifically talking about. I'm talking about those who assaulted police officers, and I find it repugnant that you would
But
be
even the
okay.
ones who did assault a police officer.
Yeah.
How many people? Now, I don't ever promote assaulting police officers. I respect law enforcement. I don't think anybody should assault anybody. But that being said, if you assaulted a police officer, if you had a bad night, not you, but let's say somebody had a bad night, had too much to drink, they go outside, and the police officer's like, it's time for you to go home, buddy. They put this hand on his shoulder, and next thing you know, they're punching the cop. You would go to jail for a lot of different things, and one of it's battery on a law enforcement
Yeah, but that
officer.
wasn't the circumstances.
But you're not going to go to jail for 20 years.
That wasn't the circumstances that took place on January 6th, where somebody was intoxicated. In fact, I don't think you can find
Even
me
if
one case.
even if you were stone sober and you punched a cop, you're not going to go to jail for 20 years.
There were multiple. It wasn't just assaulting police officers. Many of them destroyed property, and they went in there trying to overthrow
if a normal
the outcome of the
American
election.
destroyed, this is what I'm trying to say, Brian. It's not that I'm condoning the activities or the crimes that were committed that day.
It sounds like you are. You said most of them are patriots.
I don't.
You said most of them are patriots,
I
David.
don't think the way they were prosecuted is consistent with the way you prosecute those crimes. Just because it was January 6th and just because politics were involved doesn't mean you prosecute crimes differently.
So we'll agree to disagree on that. You think the hammer was put down on these guys and they weren't prosecuted fairly. Okay.
Correct.
You still characterized most of them as patriots, which I find absurd. How can you characterize someone a patriot who attacks a police officer?
I didn't say all of them were.
You said most of them.
The people who showed up that day, and I'm not, and I got to be careful with the phrase violence because a lot of people.
Was Ashley Babbitt a patriot?
I think Ashley Babbitt was murdered. She was murdered, regardless if you think she's a patriot or not. She was murdered. She didn't have a weapon.
I know, but
she was shot with no weapon, and the officer who shot her, nothing happened to him.
So that was investigated. Was investigated.
Right, investigated.
And I completely 100% disagree with you. First of all, the law says because it was investigated and no charges were brought on that officer, number one. Number two, she was 15 to 20 feet away from a bunch of politicians. She was warned, get down. A gun was pointed at them, and she continued.
Who had a gun? Who had a gun?
The police officer had a gun.
Right. Did Ashley Babbitt have a gun? What weapon did she possess?
All right. So all right, let's go with that for a moment.
Let's can't just murder people.
Let's go with that. Let's go with that.
The government can't just murder people.
I'm going to go with that for a moment, and we're going to talk about Ferguson.
Okay.
Because in Ferguson, you had a young man who had just committed a strong arm robbery, did not have a weapon on his person.
Right.
Now, it was a lie when he said, well, the stand, hands up, don't shoot. That was a lie.
Right.
We have witnesses that say that man, Michael Brown, ran towards the officer. He did not have a weapon on him. I defended the officer. I defended the officer just like people like you did and the Sean Hannitys of the world and everyone on the right. Michael Brown did not have a weapon. But if you're targeting people and you're going towards people and chanting hang Mike Pence and you're doing what Ashley Babbitt was doing.
What was she doing?
She was trying to get at the politicians that were 10, 15 feet away.
That video. I've seen that horrific video where she was shot.
So if they just let people in.
She was told to climb through a broken window. They're like, go through that window.
So if they just let that mob, and that's what they were, a bunch of terrorists.
Do you know what was right behind Ashley Babbitt before she was shot? You saw what happened in the next scene after she hit the ground, right? There was 7 armed SWAT team members who were coming up to intercede, right? She didn't need to be shot.
So you can say she didn't need to be shot.
Right.
You can also say Michael Brown didn't need to be shot. The bottom line is,
but if you agree that Michael Brown didn't need to be shot, then why not Ashley Babbitt too?
I never said that. I think Michael Brown deserved to be shot. He was a thug. He deserved to die. He attacked a police officer. Ashley Babbitt, while I respect her service to this country,
she didn't attack a police officer.
Was a brainwashed moron who believed the lies being put forth by Donald Trump that the election was stolen. She was a fringe. And if you look at her videos, she was
a veteran.
Doesn't matter whether she was a veteran. What matters what happened in that moment. Just because you're a veteran doesn't give you the right to storm the Capitol and chase after politicians when you're asked to stand down. Ashley Babbitt died because she was a moron.
No,
she did it to
Ashley
herself.
Babbitt died because a rogue and violent police officer shot an unarmed woman through a window.
So what would have happened if she wasn't shot and they just let people go through that window and they just let people chase the politicians?
They never would have made it through the window. There was a SWAT team 10
David, what would have happened
behind them? All of them were about to be cleared out of that corridor. They were literally right behind her.
So here's the deal, right?
The corridor is about to be cleared. They shot her for no reason. whatsoever.
Why is it? Okay, so first of all, to say that she was shot for no reason, as if she was just walking on a public sidewalk, is absurd.
Deadly force is not authorized unless it's meeting deadly force, and especially in Washington, D.C. You have to look at the law. Just because you carry a badge doesn't mean the law doesn't apply to you.
They were in an area that they were not allowed.
Warranted. You're not allowed to use deadly force, and they did.
They were in an area they were not allowed to be in. They were chanting "Hang Mike Pence."
You can't say they weren't allowed to be there. It's a public building.
No, they were not allowed to be in that area of the building.
They were in a staircase, and there was people destroying property. Correct.
Yes, they were not allowed to be there. They were already breaking the law.
Okay, so they're trespassing. You don't have a right to shoot trespassers.
You do have a right to
shoot
someone when you feel like your life is in danger or other lives are in danger.
Right. So whose life was in danger? Was that
the politicians that were 15 feet away? Why do you think they were running for their lives?
Go through that door. They didn't get through the door. Because if that's true, why didn't they just spray down everybody in that hallway? Why didn't they just bomb it, drop a grenade in there if they were all threatening the lives of? But that's not what happened. They took several shots at Ashley Babbitt through a window. They wanted to kill her. It was murder. There was armed SWAT team members rising the steps behind her.
To say that they wanted to kill people that day when they did not want January 6th to happen, that is a mischaracterization.
Well, we all know that they didn't secure the building properly. We know that at one point they actually
excuse the crimes that were committed that day.
They invited people into the building.
That is also
it was already breached. We've seen
that is also a complete mischaracterization of the context of what took place that day, and I'll explain why. When you have a couple, and by the way, some of those Capitol police officers spoke about this, and there were a few officers that I wouldn't characterize as letting them in. The reason why is because they saved lives. There were hundreds of people to one or two officers. Now they have two choices in that situation. Either they take out their gun and they start spraying bullets,
you let them in,
or you let them in. So
if you're a person who got let into the building, right? Let's say you walked up after the fact. You're like, "Oh, this protest is getting fun. Oh, okay, cool. We can go in." And then you go in, and then so you know you're shot in the chest. I mean, or sentenced to 10 years in prison for walking through the building.
Okay, so first of all, the reason why some of those people got into the building is because those officers felt extremely threatened, and they had two choices to make. And it seems like you're just defending those actions. And it's just like, to me, it's like, it's mesmerizing. I don't know how we got into the January 6th stuff.
I don't know, because we always have these tangents, and they're fun. They're good debates. A lot of people agree with me. A lot of people agree with you. Your audience hates me. It's fun. That's why we do it.
That's not true. But at the same time, if you break the law, you break the law. Ashley Babbitt was breaking the law that day. It was investigated. You can disagree with the investigation until the cows come home. But there's a lot of MAGA Republicans that they disagree with all the investigations when it comes to Republicans. But when it comes to a Democrat, Hunter Biden, that guy.
You have to say Matt Gaetz is innocent as well. There was investigations and nothing was found about him. That applies to the officer, applies to Matt Gaetz, right?
So here's my opinion to Matt Gaetz. His behavior is repugnant and it's disgusting. Anybody.
What behavior?
I'm going to explain it right now. Anybody who is an elected official who shows and brags about on the House floor naked pictures of women that he's had sex with and brags about it is not somebody that should be an assemblyman, a mayor, a congressman. By the way, Matt Gaetz never passed one bill. He was ineffective. Or, God forbid, the attorney general. Donald Trump decided to pick the guy who bragged about sexcapades with young girls. And how do we know this? Because we know several Republicans, by the way, and I'm forgetting the names, but several Republicans on the record that said, yeah, he showed me blah, 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 blah.
Republicans that hate him because they're Kevin McCarthy.
So they're all lying.
So I'm just saying there's not always credible people who make accusations.
Why did he not want the report to be public? Why did he do everything to try to make, why did he step down? Why did he try to make sure that report did not become public? Well, David, I think to any reasonable person would say, because there's very damning evidence in that report, and Matt Gaetz did not want people to see it. Just like Donald Trump did not want people to see his medical records. He won't release them. Superman, the Orange Man.
But you're making speculations based on what you think would have happened.
So you tell me then, why do you think he didn't want people to see this report? Give me one reasonable explanation to why Matt Gaetz.
I don't know that he didn't want people to see the report,
really?
First of all.
Really?
Second of all, a House Ethics Committee that hates you, you definitely don't want information. Look what they did to George Santos. I mean, they got rid of George Santos before he even had a chance to stand for his crimes.
The guy was prosecuted. He's going to go to jail. There was evidence to prove that the guy was stealing money.
Committee wanted him out of Congress before he even had a chance to
And
defend
don't steal
himself.
money. Don't steal money from your campaign and use it for liposuction.
An accusation, though. This is what I'm saying.
He was prosecuted. What are you talking about? He was found guilty.
No.
He's still going to jail.
But when he was removed from Congress,
right,
he had not been pled to anything.
They were
at that
right
point.
because they knew that
but
he
you
had
can't
done
go,
some
you can't
awful things.
But this is the premise, I guess, of our whole conversation: is just because you feel a certain way about something doesn't mean you can react to the way you feel about it before the opportunity to for real justice.
They have the right.
Away.
They have the right based on behavior alone. They have the right to expel somebody. You want to talk about the Constitution, but then when it applies to outing a Republican, all of a sudden you want to throw the Constitution out the window.
I believe everybody's innocent until proven guilty. And I think to deny the rights of the voter in his district to have who they want to represent them.
That's not how the law. That's not how the rules work. He doesn't have to be convicted of crime for them.
No, I understand. He wasn't illegally expelled. I'm just saying
they made the right decision, by the way. Would you agree?
No, I don't.
You think George Santos should still be in Congress?
Yeah, absolutely.
So let me get this right. The guy who literally stole money from all of his donors and used it for personal use, then lied about it. Mm-hmm. That's the guy that you're comfortable with.
Yes.
Still being a lawmaker.
Yes. That's what he was accused of.
No, that's what he was convicted of, David.
There's a lot of people who are convicted of a lot of things that will take. Is Hunter Biden? Did he?
He's not a politician. He's never been a lawmaker.
At the beginning of this, you said, well, while he was on drugs, you qualified his criminal behavior.
He's not a lawmaker.
He's the son of the president of the United States who was making money by going overseas.
George Santos was a congressman.
And Hunter Biden is the son of the president.
He's not a lawmaker.
It doesn't matter. I'm telling you.
What do you mean it doesn't matter? Yes, it does. You're saying you're okay with a guy who literally stole money from donors, used it for personal use, lied about it, continues to lie about it. He was convicted of these charges and fraud. He was stealing some of his donors' credit card numbers. It was worse than just taking money from donors. He literally took the credit card numbers from some of the people that were supposedly friends of his, used it to buy all sorts of different stuff. And you're telling me a guy who steals credit card numbers, you're comfortable with being a congressman and being a lawmaker, David? I can't believe you're saying this.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'm shocked that you would be okay with that. So I'm shocked that you would be okay with that. We could have disagreements on the January 6ers, but you're talking about a guy who literally stole credit card numbers, convicted of fraud and stealing money. What's next? If somebody robs a bank, are you going to be okay with them because they have an R next to their name being a lawmaker as well? Where does it stop with you?
I think, and this goes to the point of this entire conversation, which goes to so many.
What is the point?
What is that? I don't even know anymore. No, I think the point of all of this is when you get into the realm, and this is what I hope we start moving away from. When you start to get into a realm where prosecutions are either actually political or perceived to be political, it starts to call into question the entire criminal process. And I think we're at a point where we've just, for political purposes, we've crossed into no man's land of weaponizing things that were holy, and whether they're ethics investigations or criminal investigations, or the way you charge somebody or sentence somebody.
David,
we have to be objective when it comes to the law, and politics, unfortunately, have corrupted.
And I'm
everything.
trying to be objective by telling you this. And I will say this in layman's terms. I don't care whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. Don't care what the color of your skin is. I don't care what your political beliefs are. You could be the biggest Biden supporter or Trump supporter. If you are convicted in a court of law of stealing money from donors and taking credit card numbers, I don't want that person serving in public office in any capacity. And I am shocked that you're okay with that, and you're okay with somebody representing you, in this case, a Republican who is a convicted thief. I can't believe you're okay with that. It's one thing to talk about, well, maybe they shouldn't have kicked him out. I think they made the right decision, but we can agree to disagree on that. But the man is
what I'm saying is, and we've talked about this a lot with the January 6th stuff, because you said they've admitted to it. They're convicted. They said they did it. Where you talk about Trump, he's a convicted felon, even though he's not. But the
A
thing
jury,
is,
a jury again.
I know
we're
a
going
jury
back to
found him.
these.
I know.
Yeah.
But
That's
the point
kind of important.
it's not, because he's not a convicted
So a
felon.
jury's verdict is not important now.
No. The jury makes a recommendation. The judge has to accept that verdict, and they didn't. So
And the judge, you're telling me you don't think the judge would have accepted are you kidding me?
We'll never know. We'll never know. That verdict might not have stood. Remember,
You don't think Manchin would have accepted the verdict?
Remember, there was a Supreme Court ruling, and it called into question whether or not the president could even stand trial for those crimes to begin with. And that's before even addressing the appellant issues with the trial in it of itself. That case is so problematic for so many different reasons. So to take that jury verdict and say, oh, see, he's convicted.
So the case itself, even though a jury found that Donald Trump was guilty of 34 felony counts, that's problematic to you, but it's not problematic of a guy stealing credit card numbers.
What I'm saying is
that's not problematic.
What's problematic
is the case is problematic to you.
What's problematic is the way cases are brought and the way cases are prosecuted and the perception of whether or not they are political, as Joe Biden mentioned in the pardon of Hunter Biden, where he said specifically that these cases were politically motivated. He felt that a special prosecutor, by the way, in his executive FBI, in his branch, he felt the special prosecution of his child was politically motivated.
And why would he say that? Maybe because the next leader of the FBI, Kash Patel, in every interview talks about how he's going to go after the Biden family. So
what I'm telling you is, if the president of the United States believes that his executive branch, his FBI, can politically target his own family, right? If that's the standard, and that's the belief, and that's why he pardoned his son.
So, but there's evidence, there's fact and fiction, though. I mean, there's
not fact
evidence.
or fiction. It's perception. Because
George Santos is a thief. Can we agree on that?
No, I don't believe he's a thief. I believe he was charged with. I believe people made accusations against him. They charged him with things, and I believe he took a deal that he felt was in his best interest, considering the charges he was faced with. Like when anybody else. Now, is he convicted of those things? I'm not going to argue what facts say, but whether or not that's who he is as a person, I think political prosecutions are a problem, no matter who you are, and I believe it doesn't necessarily. I think we need to move away from targeting certain people based on who they are politically.
I would say I think we need to move away from politicians that steal credit card numbers, and that was proven in a court of law, by the way, and there's a paper trail. I think we need to move away from that, and I think we need to prosecute people that steal money. That's just my personal opinion.
I just would like to see us go to a time where we're not prosecuting people for political purposes, as Joe Biden alleged was happening with Hunter. And if that's true, then it also applies to January 6th prosecutions. You could apply it to George Santos. You could apply it to Matt Gaetz. You could apply it to anybody. If prosecutions are political, and unarguably, Donald Trump is the best example of political prosecutions, whether you think it was political or not. If Joe Biden is making the argument that Hunter Biden deserved to be pardoned because as the son of the president, his prosecutions were political, that standard needs to apply to every other prosecution where the perception is that prosecution was political. That's my opinion.
For the record, I just want to get this on the record. You would be totally fine with George Santos being back in the halls of Congress and being a congressman. You're totally okay with Matt Gaetz being the attorney general, the leader as the attorney general there, the most important attorney in the land. Yeah. You're totally okay with Kash Patel, a guy who is talking about going after members of the media. I guess you love the fact that he's going to be going after members of the media that don't like Donald Trump, either civilly or criminally. He's talked about that. You're totally okay with a 34-count felon and a liable sexual abuser, an adjudicated rapist who has 25 women. He is 25 women that have accused him of sexual assault or rape. You're totally okay with that. You're totally okay with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Being in charge of all of our health.
I love the idea of RFK.
You love it. The same guy who talks about vaccines causing a disease that have been completely debunked. You're totally okay with that. You're totally okay with a guy like a Pete Hegseth, whose own mother said he's a woman abuser, who his entire life he's abused women, who has been accused of sexual assault. You're totally okay with all these people being in the most powerful positions in this country. For the record, you're totally okay with that.
I'm more than okay with it. I'm excited about it.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough, David. It's why I like having you on the show. It's always a good conversation, a good debate. I think next time we're going to have to take some calls, and
can we please do that next time?
Yes, I promise you.
Because I always go when I watch the shows and I read the comments and I see everybody saying all these and mixed.
I mean, we could do 10 minutes now. I don't know how much time you have.
I don't. Let's do it next time. Let's
do
calls next time. Yeah, let's do
it next time. I'm sure it'll be just as fiery of a conversation, and we'll do it next time. And I'll give you my word. We'll do that next time.
Right,
David Pollock, from the David Pollock podcast. I appreciate you coming on the show as always. Man, I got to do your show one of these days, man.
I know we really got to do that.
I do all these other. I did my own first space, by the way, the other day. You'd be proud of me. So
you did your own space.
I did, yeah, and a lot of people were watching, believe it or not.
Nice.
So I'm going to start getting into it a little bit more with
you.
Space.
It's a lot. Look, town halls are great, even if you agree or disagree. It provides the opportunity, like the reason why I come on this show.
Sure.
It provides the opportunity for us to at least have both sides of the discussion. Nobody likes echo chambers, and we can disagree, but we still have to look. We're not fighting each other, and the idea is we need to be able to have these conversations.
No, and
not
the
hating
truth,
one another. That's
I don't know when your. I agree. I don't know when your birthday is, but for your birthday present, I might get you a Matt Gaetz and a George Santos cameo for your birthday.
Oh,
I
would
might
love
do
that. I would absolutely love that. Yeah, I'll let you know. I'll DM you.
Fair enough. David Pollock, thanks for coming on, my friend. I appreciate it.
All right, thanks for having me, brother.
All right, have a good one. That's David Pollock, everybody. Now, I did want to switch topics before we take a break here, and I'm going to talk about this when we come back. Wow, that was a fiery conversation, that's for sure. I can't believe he would be okay with George Santos still being in office or Matt Gaetz being the AG. But anyway, I want to switch topics with you. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, you've heard of this guy, Daniel Penny, right? He's the guy who put this Michael Jackson impersonator in a chokehold, and now he's facing trial, and I believe they're under jury deliberations, and we're going to see how this plays out. I'm going to tell you why I believe Daniel Penny deserves to be in prison for a very long time. We're going to talk about that when we come back. And I also want to share with you guys, check out my new website. It's pushingthelimits.live. We're an independently owned radio show. We rely on good people like you to support what we do. So if you enjoy what I do and you want to support what we do, pushingthelimits.live. We do sell merchandise up there. There's also a donate button right on the front page. Whatever you can afford, we appreciate very much. Pushingthelimits.live. We will take a quick break before we do the official gaming bar of the Pushing the Limits radio show. Is Jackson's Bar and Grill, located at Flamingo and Jones. I'll probably be heading out there today, actually. Jackson's Bar and Grill, where you can win up to $500 in free slot play during a Vegas Golden Knights game. We got a Vegas Golden Knights game tonight. Up to $500 in free slot play. Every Monday and Wednesday this month, you have a chance to win a free bottle of wine if you earn up to 300 points. Check them out. Jackson's Bar and Grill, located at Flamingo and Jones. All right, we're going to talk Daniel Penny when we come back. Take a quick break. Be back right after this. It's Pushing the Limits right here on KSHP.
Hey, everybody, are you struggling to find a pizza place that reminds you of Brooklyn? That true blue New York style pie? Well, worry no more. Stallone's Italian Eatery Pizza is a knockout. We're located at 467 East Silverado Ranch Boulevard, just off of Premium Road, half a mile east of South Point Casino, just minutes from the Las Vegas Strip. Come by and grab a slice of pie. Plus, check out our Brooklyn-inspired Italian cuisine. Our sandwiches are super. Hero, that is. Because why be a sub when you can be a hero? Stallone's Italian Eatery is here to serve you phenomenal food, Vegas. Forget about it.
Have you ever dreamed of having your own radio show or a podcast, but just didn't think it was possible? Well, dreams can come true. Radio U. Radio U is a 5-day course that'll teach you how to acquire your dream show. We'll teach you how to host, how to write commercial, how to interview, how to market, how to write a contract, and most importantly, how to monetize your dream radio show. You'll learn from some of the best in the business with over 75 years in broadcast experience. You'll learn from people like me. And the best part? Every single student will be live on the radio as part of the class. Plus, one student from each class will get their very own radio show. You'll be live on the air right here in Las Vegas. Radio U. The 5-day course is being offered at $699. For more information, give Radio U a call. 702-763-5024. That's 702-763-5024. Or check them out at RadioYOU101.com.
It's time to wake up and win the weekend. You're listening to the boss of the big ball. JP the Cat, giving you that grease. Saturday and Sunday from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific time for the live action on Vegas Scoreboard Express on KSHP 107.1 FM and AM 1400. Dive into the game day with my in-depth analysis, expert predictions, and winning plays from the sharpest minds in sports betting. It's more than just placing bets. It's about securing wins. Head over to jptheticket.com and be sure to tune in to KSHP this weekend from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific time to ride the winning wave with VSX. Tune in and get your money back from the sports book. All money, all sports, no bull. Missed the live show? Subscribe to Vegas Wolf Ford Express on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, TuneIn, and wherever you enjoy your favorite podcast and radio listening.
All right, welcome back. It is Pushing the Limits on a Tuesday. Thank you so much for joining us. Good fiery debate with David Pollock. That was fun. We'll take some calls here in a little bit as well. Still a lot of people with mixed emotions and feelings and opinions when it comes to Joe Biden pardoning his son. So we'll get to that here in a little bit. But I do want to switch topics, if I may, and we'll certainly take phone calls on this. You might have heard of this story of Daniel Penny, a guy who served the country, who was in a subway with another gentleman who was acting irrationally, yelling, screaming, threatening people, did not have a weapon, never made physical contact with anybody. Penny decides to put him in a chokehold and take matters into his own hands, and this guy nearly dies. The worst part about this is Penny kept him in a chokehold even when he was unconscious. It reminds me a little bit of George Floyd in the sense that George Floyd was chauvin's, and if you remember, Derek Chauvin's knee was still on his neck. So Penny has been charged with second-degree manslaughter and criminal negligent homicide in connection to the death that occurred back in May of 2023. Prosecutors are saying that Penny recklessly killed the 30-year-old by maintaining the hold far longer than Neely could have reasonably been considered a threat, and Penny's attorneys have argued that his actions were justified. To me, this is a very, very simple case, and I'm going to explain why. Now, if you think Kyle Rittenhouse is a hero, and you think Derek Chauvin didn't do anything wrong, then you're probably going to call this guy, Penny, a hero as well. Penny is not a hero. In my opinion, he's a murderer, and I'll explain why. So in your life, I think it's fair to say, at some point in your life, you've been in public and somebody was acting very irrationally, right? Maybe somebody was talking to themselves. Maybe somebody was threatening people. Maybe somebody was screaming erratically, and it made you feel uncomfortable. Maybe you were even fearful. Very possible. I've been on buses before where there have been some crazy people when I was a teenager, and people were yelling and screaming, and I was fearful. But that doesn't make it okay to put someone in a chokehold and kill somebody. That doesn't defend the fact that you can do that. Now, if somebody has a weapon, that's certainly a clear and present danger to threaten somebody's life. If somebody make physical contact, so for example, if this guy, Neely, physically was assaulting somebody, you would have the right to get involved in a physical aspect. That's not what happened here. So if our precedent, and you think that this guy, Penny, is a hero, then what you're saying is, if somebody's fearful or scared, it's okay to use deadly force on somebody. You're saying if somebody starts screaming and yelling and makes you uncomfortable or fearful, it's totally okay for somebody to put someone in a chokehold even after they're unconscious and keep them in that chokehold and kill them. That's what you're saying. There's no other way around this, and that's why I say that this guy is a murderer. A little bit about this guy, Neely, and it's a very, very sad story. A 30-year-old black man who grew up in New Jersey, a talented dancer, locally known as a Michael Jackson impersonator. Now, he did have an extensive criminal record. He suffered from mental illness and depression. And what's really sad about this story is back in 2007, he was only 14 years old, and his mother was murdered by a man with whom she had been in an abusive relationship with. That had to affect him his entire life. It's horrible. Her body was found in a suitcase on the side of the road. Now, Neely developed major depression, schizophrenia, and post-traumatic stress disorder, which I would understand after the murder of his mother. Horrible. He was placed in foster care. He did have 42 arrests, including petty larceny, jumping subway turnstiles, theft, and 3 unprovoked assaults. That's horrible. But what I will tell you is that this man was mentally ill, and he wasn't assaulting anybody physically on this train. If he put his hands on somebody, I would feel differently about this situation. He didn't. So a lot of the people that talk about George Floyd and say, And again, most of these people are white MAGA supporters that would do this. I used to work with one of them, sadly, a known bigoted racist, who said, well, George Floyd, he was on drugs. He was tendering fake bills. He was a bad guy. And my response to the idiocy is very simple. It doesn't matter what the person did in their prior life. It doesn't matter. All that matters is the circumstances surrounding and what happened at that moment when this person died. George Floyd was on his stomach with his hands behind his back handcuffed when Derek Chauvin murdered him. That's why Derek Chauvin is a convicted murderer, and right now he's behind bars. That was murder. Doesn't matter what he did in the past. All that matters is in that moment and what led up to it. That's all that matters. Same thing in this case. Doesn't matter what this guy Neely did in the past. All that matters is in that moment. And we have the evidence, and the evidence has been recorded. He didn't have any weapons on him. He never made physical contact with anybody. He was a mentally ill man with severe depression. He was screaming and yelling and acting irrationally and was making threats. But just because somebody yells and makes a threat at somebody doesn't mean that you can kill them. And make no mistake about it, Daniel Penny killed this man. Now, do I think Daniel Penny walked onto the subway wanting to kill somebody? Of course not. Do I even think Daniel Penny was trying to kill him? Probably not. But it doesn't matter. That's why he was charged with second-degree manslaughter and criminal negligent homicide. Because even though your intention might not be to kill somebody, look at the behavior. He kept him in a chokehold when he was motionless. Think about that for a second. If you're trying to de-escalate a situation, do you keep somebody in a chokehold when they're motionless and unconscious? That's exactly what this guy did. And then when he's interviewed hours later by law enforcement, he's calling him a crackhead. That shows, at least in my opinion, that he had no respect for this man's life at all. I think he needs to go to jail. Now, the other side, before we take phone calls at 702-221-7283, the other side of this, it's astounding to me, and it's usually white people that are defending Daniel Penny. It's usually MAGA supporters. Pete Hegseth was one of them last year. So I want you to listen to Fox News, or as I like to call them, Fox Noise, because they enjoy watching and showing clips of black people committing crimes every day. They do it every day. This is Pete Hegseth and the cronies on Fox News discussing this case and defending Daniel Penny. Have a listen to this.
The person who took that punch that you're talking about could have been Jordan Neely. I mean, he had over 40 priors, cold cocking people on the subways. This is the kind of guy that got violent often and quickly. And Will, when you say we need more Daniel Pennys, you're right. You know why? Because he wasn't trying to kill anybody. He was a protector.
Yes. Right then and there, these idiots. This is exactly what I'm talking about. It doesn't matter what he did in the past if he cold cocked somebody in the past. What matters is he didn't cold cock anybody that day. But these imbeciles don't understand how the law works. It doesn't matter what he did in the past. But that's what these morons do. They did the same thing with George Floyd. Oh, well, he used to cold cock people on the subway. Doesn't matter because he didn't do it that day.
He went into a chokehold. Then, while he was still breathing, released it into a resting position.
That's not true.
He didn't want to kill the guy.
That's not true. They're lying. Pete Hegseth is a liar. He didn't release him when he stopped breathing. He kept him in that chokehold. That's a lie.
Because he didn't want to kill the guy. And the passengers around him are thanking him.
Doesn't matter.
Again, New York City passengers used to lunatics on the subway, but don't want to actually be threatened in that process. The fact that he's a Marine will be used against him by the prosecution to say he's potentially violent, ticking time bomb. You know, all the upsides of being a Marine will be attempted to use. But it also means he knew what he was doing and not trying. If he wanted to kill somebody, he could if he really intended to.
He did.
Trying to.
He did.
Trying to protect in this instance.
He did.
It's amazing to watch Eric Adams go from being reasonable at the beginning of this whole thing, which he was. He said, let's wait for the activists take to the podium with the high school graduation photo and the Michael Jackson impersonation photo to make it look like their client was all good. And suddenly now he's giving statements about, well, that could have been me. Basically the Barack Obama defense of like, he's a young black man that was. This has nothing to do with anything.
Really?
So what did you two do? You're in this. This is now happening. You now see what happened to this young Marine.
Yeah, I don't want to hear from them anymore. It's so despicable and it's so disgusting. Well, this guy was cold cocking people in the past. Same idiots and racist bigots like Pete Hegseth who said, oh, well, George Floyd, he was a bad guy. He was tendering fake bills. He was on fentanyl. These racist bigots. It doesn't matter. All that matters is the circumstances in that moment and the moments that led up to it. And what we know are the facts in this case. Fact. This guy who was murdered did not have a weapon on him. Fact. Number 2, he never made physical contact with anybody on the train. What was he doing? You could have probably arrested him or even cited him for disorderly conduct. That's the crime that he was committing. And if you're committing a disorderly conduct, many officers would say, you don't use deadly force on somebody that's committing a disorderly conduct. That's what he was doing. He wasn't physically assaulting anybody. He was screaming and yelling and scaring people. That doesn't give somebody the right to put somebody in a chokehold and kill them. And for the Pete Hegseths of the world, the idiots whose own mother called him a woman abuser because that's who he is, I find it very interesting. Why is it always the white person they defend? I ask you all a question. If Daniel Penny was black and this Michael Jackson impersonator, Neely, was white, would Fox News have talked like that? Would they be defending this man if he killed a white guy and he was black? I want you to think about that for a moment. Would Fox News be defending him? Would all these white supremacists all over the country be defending this guy and calling him a hero if this man was black and the Michael Jackson impersonator was white? Would they be defending the black man? Answer that question for me, please. It's interesting because remember that case in New York City, Gardner, the guy who was in a chokehold by an officer, never convicted of a crime. All the Fox News whiteys out there defended this police officer. They defend Kyle Rittenhouse. Now, I know Kyle Rittenhouse wasn't a convicted murderer, wasn't convicted of a crime, but he had dreams of shooting people. He said it a week before in his car. They all defend Kyle Rittenhouse. In fact, Turning Point pays him to make speeches. Why do they defend these white people? Why do they defend Derek Chauvin? If George Floyd was white and Derek Chauvin was black, would they still defend Derek Chauvin? I'm going to ask you all that question right now. If Daniel Penny was black and he killed a white man on the subway, would Pete Hegseth and the Fox News idiots be defending Daniel Penny? I say absolutely not, because this has to do with race, ladies and gentlemen. And this was a troubled man with a criminal record. I understand that. He was mentally ill, but he should not be dead. And Daniel Penny deserves to go to jail because I believe he's a murderer. Number to call if you want to be a part of the conversation to talk about this topic, 702-221-7283. Again, that number if you want to join the conversation, 702-221-7283. Whether you agree or disagree, I do want to hear from you. I want to know what you think about this case. Maybe you think I'm wrong. Is that the precedent that we are setting for people in society now, where if you're scared or if somebody is threatening you, vigilantism, that's what we're doing now? You can take your arm and choke somebody out and kill somebody? Is that the standard? I just want to know. Think about all the drunk people in public that act irrationally and scream and say they're going to beat somebody up. So you can just put that person in a chokehold and kill them? I'm just asking, is that the standard? Because the people on social media right now that say I'm wrong, they're saying that that's okay. Number to call again if you want to be a part of the conversation, 702-221-7283. We have one phone line open. 702-221-7283 is the number to call. Let's start with Mark. Mark is first up on PTL. Hey, Mark, what's going on?
Thank you, Brian. Let me first say about David Pollock, he's a MAGA garbage pail. and every time you made a point, he would just ignore it and go right to Biden. Now let's remember this, that the Republicans are talking about this because it's the shiny object taking your eye off the ball of what they really are doing behind the scenes with Trump and Project 2025 and all that.
No,
this is just a bullcrap talking point.
I get you.
Because they know what they're doing.
I get you. What are your thoughts on this Penny situation, what took place on the subways in New York?
It's 100% racial.
Mm-hmm.
It's 100%. Look at what happened. Look what happened with Arbery, I think it was.
Ahmaud Arbery. Yep.
He was just jogging, and the guy came out. 3 guys come out, 2 with shotguns and 1 with a handgun, and they.
So, Mark, do you agree? Do you agree with me, Mark, that listen, if this guy had a gun or he was physically assaulting somebody, I would feel completely different about this situation. I would call this guy Penny a hero. But that didn't happen. Just because you threaten somebody verbally and you're acting irrationally, which clearly he was, doesn't mean that you can take matters into your own hands and chokehold somebody into death. Why is that? Why are we fighting over this stuff?
I agree with you 100%.
But
Brian.
I know you agree, but I'm saying, why are people fighting over this? It's such a clear-cut case, in my opinion. Like, it'd be one thing if he held him back.
Because what divides us the most, Brian, in this country?
Race.
What divides us?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You hit it on the head.
Yeah, it's race. No question.
Everything is race.
Yeah, you're right. Mark, listen, you're right. I agree with you. I hope this guy gets convicted. I really do. If he doesn't get convicted, it's a miscarriage of justice. It really is. Thank you for the call, Mark. 702-221-7283 is the number to call. Let's go to Darren. Darren is next up on PTL. Hey, Darren, what's going on?
Hey, Brian, how you doing?
Good. What do you think about this case? What are your thoughts?
I think you're right. And I was going to ask you about a case in. Did you see the one in Springfield, Illinois, where the cop shot the black woman?
Oh, that was horrible. Oh my God. I got to tell you something, Darren.
Well,
I watched that video and I almost started to cry, man. I mean, I watched that poor woman. And what Darren's talking about is in Springfield out there, there were 2 white officers and a black woman who called 911 because she thought somebody was breaking into her house. This is a woman who suffered from anxiety and mental illness. She goes into the kitchen and she says to one of the officers, "I rebuke you in the name of Jesus." And for whatever weird reason, that idiot officer and murderer took offense to that, takes out his weapon. She holds a pot over her face to protect her. He shoots her in the head and kills her. This stuff's got to stop, man. It's got to stop.
Well, I brought that up because that cop is getting out of jail.
That is, I didn't know that. Did that just happen?
Yeah. I saw the article yesterday. I was at work. I didn't have time to read it, but yeah, I live close to that area, so I saw it as a local headline.
I mean, we all saw the body cam footage. He's a murderer. Yeah. He's a murderer. I mean, what are we doing as a society when we say it's okay to shoot a woman if you're a cop? What are we saying as a society? It's okay to put somebody in a chokehold because somebody's acting irrationally and screaming. What are we doing as a society? It shouldn't matter what the color of your skin is. It shouldn't matter what side of the political aisle you're on. That's not okay. It's not okay. It's murder, man. Like, I don't understand. I have a lot of respect, as I'm sure you do, Darren, for law enforcement. But if you shoot somebody, a woman, for no reason other than her saying, "I rebuke you in the name of Jesus," what country are we living in? That son of a bitch should be in jail for the rest of his life, as far as I'm concerned.
I agree. And I don't understand how people support that. Like these Fox News MAGA morons think that they should be judge, jury, and executioner, and then they defend them when they do these.
Are these people let me ask you, Darren, are these people just racist? Are they stupid? I guess stupidity and racism go hand in hand, right? But I mean, what is it with these people? How can you defend Derek Chauvin? There are still people out there that think Derek Chauvin should be pardoned. What are these people watching? Do you think we should just execute a bunch of I mean, I don't understand. What is wrong with these people?
It's sick. And you know what's even sicker is that, I mean, now it's happening on camera and they're still letting them walk.
You know what Will Smith said, and I hate to quote Will Smith, but I will here. Will Smith, obviously an African-American man, and he said something very true. He said, It's not that this is happening more today. It's just that it's being held on camera. It's on tape now.
Yeah.
And he's 150% right. Well, I got to tell you, man, I'm really sorry to hear about this officer being let out. He's a murderer. He should be behind bars. That district should be ashamed of themselves. He murdered that poor woman who did literally absolutely nothing wrong. So I'm really sad to hear that, my friend. I'll continue to kind of monitor that case, and I appreciate your call, sir. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem. Big supporter.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. 702-221-7283 is the number to call. If you're just joining us, we're talking about Daniel Penny. I believe they're in jury deliberations as we speak. He's the man who put a chokehold on this Michael Jackson impersonator who was acting irrationally, screaming, yelling, acting irrationally, never put his hands on anybody, never had a weapon on him. And Penny kept him in a chokehold for at least a minute after he was unconscious. And now people are calling Penny a hero? I think you all are idiots for thinking that way. 702-221-7283. Let's go to Julie. Julie's next on PTL. Hello, Julie.
Hey, Brian. I completely agree. This was racially motivated.
Yeah.
Like, it's completely crazy. If somebody were here in Nashville acting that way, I'd call mobile crisis or try to get authorities to go see him.
Right.
Because
it's a really sad story. And it doesn't matter what this guy did in his prior life. I'm talking about the victim here. He did some terrible things. He had mental illness. He lived a troubled life. But that doesn't excuse that behavior. And if you listen to these morons like Pete Hegseth, the woman abuser, if you listen to him on Fox News talk about this case, he did exactly what they did with George Floyd, these racist bigots, these white racist bigots. Oh, George Floyd was a bad guy. He was a bad guy. Doesn't matter if you were a bad guy. All that matters is what happened in that moment. Same thing here. It doesn't matter if this guy committed crimes in the past. The bottom line is, it was a public disturbance. It doesn't mean you deserve to die and be in a chokehold. I don't.
Exactly.
This is so clear cut to me. I don't understand people. I don't.
I mean, the dude must have been in a mental health crisis. I'm a peer counselor.
Yeah.
I've seen this stuff.
He was. I mean, he lost
to get that person treated.
He lost his mother when his mother was murdered brutally when he was 14 years old. Family members said he was never the same. Now, he was arrested 42 times. He was involuntarily hospitalized for mental illness. This was a very troubled man. It's a very sad story. But I got to tell you something. There has to be a price to pay for somebody who killed this man. And there are people out there not only saying that he's innocent, but they're calling him a hero. The same idiots who call Kyle Rittenhouse a hero. The same idiots who think Derek Chauvin is a great cop. And they always seem to be
executed.
They always seem to be on the far right. Why is that? Why is it always people on the far right, the Charlie Kirks of the world, that call Daniel Penny a hero? What do you think Charlie Kirk would say if Daniel Penny was black and the victim was white? These people, really, what would happen if Daniel Penny was black and the victim was white? Fox News wouldn't even be covering this story.
They wouldn't at all.
Or if they did cover it, they would call him a murderer. I mean, that's the way these people are, and that's the way they think, my dear. I don't even know what else to say. It's sick. It's sick.
It's really freaking sick as hell.
And thank you for the call. What type of country are we living in? Where if somebody raises their voice and screams and even threatens somebody, that you can kill somebody, and that's okay? We're going to call you a hero? How many times in your life have you been in a situation where somebody was screaming and yelling and acting irrationally? Did you think about putting them in a chokehold and killing them? Maybe you wanted to get out of that situation. Maybe you wanted to call the police. Maybe you were scared. All understandable things. But killing that person? Give me a break, dude. Give me a break. 702-221-7283 is the number to call if you want to be a part of the conversation. Let's go to Julian. Julian is next up on PTL. Hey, Julian, what's going on, man? What do you think about this case?
Hey, what's going on, my friend? I think it is absolutely MAGA has a way of just forgetting everything if it doesn't suit them, which is, I was listening to the guy that you had on earlier on the show when you were talking about the pardons, and it was just like that guest that you had. It's like yeah, Hunter Biden is the worst person ever. We're going to forget that Donald Trump had pardoned. Mac Flynn, right? Mike Flynn and the other piece of crap.
Yep.
It's just like MAGA has if it doesn't suit them and it's not going against them or for them, they forget everything that these people have done. I mean, it's like they live in an alternate society than us. The rules.
Well, Kellyanne
Conway
called it herself. She said it was alternative facts. They live in an alternative fact universe. If anybody is prosecuted on the far right, it must be a two-tier justice system. But that Hunter Biden, they got him good. He belongs in jail. I mean, if it doesn't fit their narrative, blame the Democrats, blame people on the left. It's such a joke. And listen, this is
the hypocrisy that you say every time, Brian. It's one of the reasons that's turned me. I grew up in the church, brother, and it's one things I talked to one of my friends who voted for Donald Trump, and I'm like, brother, you call yourself this upstanding Christian. You'll be the first to say I'm a Christian American. I believe in Jesus.
Yeah.
But yet you voted for this orange turd who's, as you always say, an adjudicated rapist. And even your guy earlier didn't want to admit Donald Trump is a 34-time convicted felon. There's not his peers. He had a jury of peers of his that said, "Bro, you are a 34-time convicted."
Well,
felon.
he wanted to get in the weeds with me because a judge, there was no sentencing yet, and I'm not about to get in the weeds with people on that. What I do find interesting here is this. Do you remember, because to me, this is who the MAGA far-right this is where the Republican Party is today. Do you remember a couple called the McCloskeys? Do you remember them?
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
So the McCloskeys pointed their weapons at a bunch of Black Lives Matter protesters who were not on their private property. And even though they went through a gate, they were on a street. They were not on their public property. And the McCloskeys went out and pointed their AR-15s and guns at those people.
Had her little pistols.
Right.
Yeah,
and now that could have been a horrible situation because if anybody was armed on the other side, shots would have rung out and people would have died. So what did the Republican Party decide to do? Well, they were charged with crimes, and of course the Republican governor dropped those charges. Yep. And the Republican National Convention had them speak. Because the Republicans today look up to people like that who point guns at a bunch of black people. And then we look at a guy by the name of Kyle Rittenhouse.
Brother, I was just about to say it.
A guy at the age of 17 years old who didn't live in that community, who decided to dress up as G.I. Joe with an AR-15, and several people ended up being shot. 2 people died. And Kyle Rittenhouse even admitted he shouldn't have been there. And a week before, in a video, he said he was dreaming about shooting people who were shoplifting. And then and the Republicans put him up
out of it.
Right. And he gets jobs out of it. And the Republican Party have praised people like Kyle Rittenhouse. Even the George Zimmerman Trayvon Martin shooting, they were defending George Zimmerman. So I ask you a question. If Daniel Penny was black, and the guy who he put in a chokehold was white, do you think the Charlie Kirks of the world would be defending Daniel Penny? And do you think that Fox News would be covering it the way they are?
Of course not, Brian. They called us thugs and ignorant because we supported George Floyd and we saw the damn officer's knee on his neck. And they told us we are praising thugs and criminals in our community because of it. So, of course, we talk about January 6th. If there was a bunch of brothers and sisters up there storming the Capitol, you think they would even have made it to the damn steps? Hell no.
No.
So they live in an alternate fact world, and this is what we deal with. It's scary. I have watched a documentary over Hitler since we were in this, and I don't like to compare too much Donald Trump to Hitler, but people need to go back and do their history and see Germany turned an eye on the same behavior, the same rhetorics, and the same issues that we're doing here in America. And if we're not careful, we're going to have that same problem.
Well said, my friend. Unfortunately, I agree with you. Let's be very clear on this. If it's a white officer that kills a black man, Charlie Kirk is the first person to defend the police officer. If it's a white man in a subway killing a black man, I believe it was murder. Charlie Kirk and the alt-far right are the first people that'll defend it. But if you watch Fox News, they'll lead you to believe that it's only black people that are committing crimes in this country. It's sick, and I've had it with these racist bigots. I've had it. Daniel Penny is a murderer. He belongs behind bars. Derek Chauvin should be stoned to death by George Floyd's family. He's a murderer. Okay? I respect law enforcement. I believe most police officers are heroes. They risk their life every day. It's a hard job. Derek Chauvin is a murderer. Daniel Penny, I respect his service to this country. It is irrelevant to his behavior and what took place on that day where he killed this guy. He put him in a chokehold and he killed him because people felt uncomfortable, because people felt scared. That's not an excuse to kill somebody. Why is that so hard for people to understand? 702-221-7283, the number to call. Let's go to Justin. Justin is next up on PTL. What's up, Justin?
Hey, Brian, I'm confused. Now, I just heard you justify the shooting of Ashley Babbitt, who didn't have a gun, but because she was making threatening comments, according to you.
No, not according to me. Not according to me. There's evidence and video.
Forget about that. Okay, forget about that.
Okay.
But making threatening comments about another side of a door that she's not on. And it's okay to shoot her. But you got a guy on a subway who you've got witnesses on video thanking this guy for supporting the same situation.
So let me respond to that.
You're okay.
Let me respond.
You're okay.
I'll
You're
respond.
Okay
I'll respond to it.
because it was a Democratic or
nothing to do with politics. Nothing to do with politics.
Yeah, it
nothing to do with politics. Okay, well, are you gonna let me answer your question now because you said something? Let's have a conversation about it.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
What's the difference between the two situations?
I'm going to explain it to you. So,
yeah, I know you will.
Situation number one, you're talking about Ashley Babbitt. Two different circumstances. Let's talk about Ashley Babbitt to start. First of all, it was investigated, and they found that officer who pulled the trigger.
I'm
answering your question.
Brian,
I'm answering your question about the shooting.
Incident. At the time,
and I'm getting into it if you will allow me to finish.
Okay, don't tell me after the fact.
I'm going to answer the question the way I want to answer it, whether you like it or not. Now, please let me finish, and then I will allow you to respond. I will start over again, uninterrupted, hopefully. It was investigated.
Hopefully I am too.
Sir, I don't want to pod you down, but I'm trying to answer your question. Stop interrupting me. Okay, if you're going to act like a child, I'll treat you like one. I'm answering your question. I'll let you respond. Be quiet. Let me answer. It's the problem with people like you. You don't know how to listen. Ashley Babbitt broke into the Capitol illegally. She was making threats. She made threats actually before in videos. And during that time, she was 15 to 20 feet away from politicians. She was heading towards those politicians. The chants leading up to that were hang Mike Pence, and we saw the violence that led up at that point. There were officers that day were on very high alert. There were 140 officers that were injured that day. People were getting roughed up. And it's Capitol Police officers' job to protect. Now, that officer in that video raises the gun. Before Ashley Babbitt was shot, the officer was saying, stand back, get down. Ashley Babbitt did not answer to those commands, and that's why the officer shot the weapon, and Ashley Babbitt was a moron who was brainwashed and deserved what she got. And by the way, sir, the law agrees with me because it was investigated and the video surfaced everywhere. Number two, going back to the subway situation. That person who was put in a chokehold and who was murdered did not, based on the video, lunge towards any people on the subway. Now, he was yelling a lot and screaming a lot and might have even been making threats. But it was not a member of law enforcement that put him in a chokehold and killed him. It was just a regular, everyday citizen. We call that in this town a vigilante. Now, if the officer, going back to the Capitol January 6th, had put, let's just say hypothetically speaking, put Ashley Babbitt in a chokehold and she became unconscious. And he didn't release his arms as she wasn't a threat. I would have a serious problem with that. He used his gun. She was a threat because she broke the window and she was trying to get through the window to get to those politicians. That was a direct threat at their lives. You cannot kill somebody just because they're screaming and yelling. This was also not a member of law enforcement. He also kept his chokehold on him, for over a minute after this man was unconscious. Now, as I bring you back to discuss, where do you disagree with me on that, sir?
Did Ashley lunge at anybody?
She was actually broke the window, getting through the window towards those politicians. She was headed in the direction of the politicians. The reason why she couldn't necessarily lunge is because she had to break through the window, which she was attempting to get through.
I'm not talking about, gymnastics.
We're not talking about gymnastics either. This isn't. Hold on. We're not talking about We're not.
Let me talk now.
We're not talking about gymnastics.
Let me talk now.
I'm letting you.
This conversation because it's the complete opposite of what you're trying to do.
No,
to
it's
Daniel
not.
Penny.
No, it's not.
It is exactly
No, it's not.
the same.
First of all,
Okay,
let me explain
so
to you
let
how
me
it's
talk.
not the same.
Don't interrupt me.
No.
I listen to you. Don't interrupt.
Guess what? I'll interrupt you if I want to, dummy. You're going to listen to me now, or you can hang up the phone. Either way, I really don't care. You just said a couple things that are completely factually inaccurate. And I'm going to explain why you're 150% wrong. First of all, there are a lot of differences in these cases. First of all, that guy on the subway was not in an area where he was not supposed to be. That's number one. Number two, this was not a government building. Number three, Daniel Penny is not in law enforcement. So you keep trying to make correlations between the two. She broke the law the second she got into that building. And this isn't about gymnastics, you dope. This isn't a sport we're talking about here. We're talking about people's lives. That's what we're talking about here. This isn't gymnastics. She broke a window, trying to get through that window to get to those politicians. You know, the people that were saying, hang Mike Pence. Now, I'm happy to have a conversation with anybody that might disagree with me. But if this guy's going to say we're not talking about gymnastics, and if this guy's going to try to make the correlation between the two, you're wrong. There is no correlation. By the way, the guy who shot Ashley Babbitt is in law enforcement. He had a gun. There were no weapons found on anybody's person in this subway, the two people that were involved here. He used his arms, kept him in a chokehold after he was unconscious. Why is it so hard for people like this to understand? I'm assuming he hung up the phone, of course. He played phone gymnastics. That's what he did. No, sir, this isn't gymnastics. This isn't a sport. We're talking about people's lives. But you'll probably defend somebody like Ashley Babbitt, right? A fringe, brainwashed idiot who believed everything that your orange turd orangutan said about the 2020 election. But you'll probably believe that because you'll listen to the mental gymnastics, if you want to use that word. Thank you for the call, sir. 702-221-7283 is the number to call. Let's go to Herb. Herb is next on PTL. Hello, Herb. Herb, are you there?
That well.
Go ahead, Herb.
Yeah, Brian, you must not have been following the case that well because
I am.
First of all, okay, listen to me closely now. First of all, you never mentioned he was on drugs, actively on drugs. He
Doesn't matter.
Drugs at the time.
Doesn't matter.
Okay,
irrelevant. Hold on, one at a time. Hold on, one at a time. I'll let you bring up something else. I'll be happy to, Herb, but let's do one at a time. Can you explain to me, if he was on drugs, which you claim he was, which I did hear he was on drugs, how that would defend Daniel Perry's actions? I heard the same thing about George Floyd. Oh, well, he was on drugs. Doesn't defend Derek Chauvin putting his knee on his neck for 8 minutes, and it certainly doesn't defend Daniel Perry putting his arm over his throat for that period of time, even after he was unconscious. So can you please explain to me the fact that this guy was on drugs, how that can work as a defense in a courtroom? Please explain that to me.
Because of his behavior, Brian. His behavior. He was threatening to kill people, and he also said he didn't care if he died.
Okay, so let me ask you. Okay, so that doesn't have anything. Okay, let's respond to that. No, we're going to go one at a time. We're going to go one at a time, and then I'll let you finish. You said his behavior, which, by the way, has nothing, it doesn't matter whether he was on drugs or not. His behavior. So let me ask you a question. Let's talk about his behavior for a moment. So if you're screaming and yelling, and let's just say you say, I'm going to kill somebody, does that give somebody the right, a Samaritan, a citizen, to chokehold somebody and kill somebody? If you say, I'm going to kill somebody and I don't care if I die, does that justify anybody putting somebody in a chokehold and killing them? But does the law say if I threaten somebody and yell at somebody that you can kill me? Please answer that question for me, Herb.
Brian.
Don't Brian me. Answer.
A lady with a
he
child.
Never physically touched. Okay, so let me ask you another question.
Listen, Brian.
You won't answer my
question. Why don't you answer my question?
You're not answering mine. You're not answering mine.
Brian, I just answered your question.
Okay, no, you answered it by saying. You answered it by saying. You answered it. Herb, hang on. Let's be patient here, okay, Herb? You said he lunged at somebody. He never made physical contact with anybody. So I'm asking you the same question, and I'm going to even rephrase it, and hopefully you'll answer it, and then I'll answer your question, and you could ask me anything you want, okay, Herb? If you're screaming and yelling, and let's just say you threaten somebody's life, and you claim that he lunged at somebody, even though I didn't see that on tape, but you don't make physical contact with anybody, you don't have any weapons on you, does that mean that a regular everyday citizen will have the right to kill somebody? Why won't you answer my question? Answer the question.
Okay, I'll answer your question, Brian. His intentions weren't to kill him.
Doesn't matter. He did kill him. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. He did kill him.
Point being, that wasn't his intention.
That's why he's charged with That's why he's charged with second-degree manslaughter, not first degree.
Brian, can we have a conversation?
Yes. Answer my question.
Okay.
Is that allowed?
Brian,
you haven't answered my question. Answer my question. I'm going to ask it again.
Brian.
No, you didn't. So you think it's justified in society if somebody is screaming and yelling and even threatens to kill somebody without making any physical contact with anybody, we as Americans are justified to kill that person. Whether it's our intent to kill them or not, it's justified to kill that person. Is that your take?
No, you're saying justified to kill the person. I'm not saying to kill him.
Okay, but he killed him. But he killed him. He killed him. He killed him.
Okay, but yes, he did kill him.
Yes, he did.
What I'm saying. Okay, Brian, you gonna let me talk?
Okay, so you're not answering my question. Go ahead.
I did answer your question, Brian.
So it's not justified.
All I said was I'm not saying that he didn't want to kill him. He wanted to control him.
I didn't ask you the intention. That wasn't my question, was his intention. I agree with you that his intention probably wasn't to kill that individual. But make no mistake about it, it doesn't change the facts he's dead. So I'm going to try to ask you again. It's yes or no. You haven't given me a yes or no answer.
You're going in circles, man.
No, I'm not. I'm asking you the same question over and over again, and you won't give me a yes or no answer. So I'm going to ask it one more time. And then if you answer yes or no, I will give you the opportunity to ask me anything you like, and I will give you the floor.
Okay,
I'm going to ask it.
Go ahead. Ask me the question.
Thank you.
Again.
I'm going to ask. This is the
floor.
This is the child. Okay. I'm a child because you won't answer a direct question. Okay, that's
you are a
very
child.
fair. I'm a child. Okay, fine, Herb. So the child is going to ask you a question, and we'll see if the adult can answer a question that the child is going to ask you. Okay, Herb. Okay.
Right.
So here's the question again, and I'm going to ask it for the fourth time because the child would like an answer. Okay, the adult refuses to answer. If in fact somebody is screaming and yelling and acting irrationally, and even threatens to kill somebody with no weapon shown, and even might have lunged at somebody without making one physical contact with anybody on that train, does it give the right for a citizen to put somebody in a chokehold, whether their intention is to kill them or not, and kill them? Is that legal? Yes or no? Answer the question.
Well, it's not a matter of it's legal. It's not right.
I didn't ask you. Pot him down. Pot him down. This is like 5 times I asked this guy a question and he won't answer. I didn't ask you. The question wasn't, Herb, is it right? That wasn't the question. I'm now going to ask it for a 6th time. And he calls me the child and the guy can't answer a direct question. Herb, is it legal? Should it be legal for somebody to put somebody in a chokehold and kill them, whether that was their intention or not, if somebody doesn't make physical contact with anybody, is not brandishing a weapon, but acts irrationally, screaming and yelling, and threatens verbally to hurt or kill somebody? Is it legal to put them in a chokehold and, in this instance, kill them? I didn't ask you if it was right. This is now the 6th time. It's a yes or no answer. Is it legal? Do you think it's legal to do that? Yes or no?
No.
Thank you.
No,
Why?
Brian, nobody does.
Okay, so
Nobody
why couldn't you
no,
just say
it's
that?
not legal.
Okay, so
But because nobody thinks it's legal. It's not a matter of it being legal.
no, there are
It's
people that
intent.
do. The last guy who
Brian,
called in thinks it's legal.
Brian, it's intent. But let me talk now. Now that you talk, let me ask you some questions. So he lunges somebody. So you're on a subway, and you're on with a bunch of people, and you got some guy who you don't know, and he's threatening people to kill people on the subway, and he doesn't give a damn about what happens to him. And he lunges at a woman with a child, and you're going to tell me you don't want somebody, if not yourself, to get up and try to control this dude?
So here's what I would want. I will now answer your question. The first thing I would want people to do is call law enforcement. Now, if somebody let me answer, Herb. I'm not finished. I'm not finished answering your question. So if you allow me to finish answering your question, I can tell you what somebody in law enforcement would do in that situation if they're on that subway. And I'll tell you what they wouldn't do. And I need you to listen very carefully. Okay, child? I need you to listen very carefully. By the way, a child, you ask a child a question, they'll answer it, and they won't have to, an adult won't have to ask them 6 times. So if anybody's the child, it's you. But I'm going to answer your question in the best way possible. Let's just say, hypothetically speaking, there's someone in law enforcement. Of course, he hung up the phone because he's a coward, and he doesn't want to listen to an actual answer because he's not capable of answering questions himself. If somebody in law enforcement was on that train, here's what they would do. They would try to subdue that individual in law enforcement. They would try to put that individual in handcuffs. What they wouldn't do was put them in a chokehold for 8 minutes while they're unconscious, continue to put them in a chokehold. You know why they wouldn't do that? Because that would harm them physically and they could die. So what is somebody supposed to do? If you're a vigilante, if somebody makes physical contact with somebody, then you have the right to physically get involved. But just because somebody lunges at somebody, by the way, the lunge did not continue. He lunged, but he didn't make physical contact with anybody. That doesn't give you the right to kill somebody, Herb. A law enforcement and a professional individual on that train would not have done what Daniel Penny did. So you can call me a child, and you could call me stupid ass. I think we know who the stupid ass is in this conversation, the person who I had to ask the same question 6 times. Now, here's what's crazy about this whole conversation. I finally got Herb to admit that Daniel Penny's actions were not legal. He admitted it. It took him 6 times. I said, is it legal? Yes or no? He said no. And he's so stupid, he doesn't understand. That's my whole point. So since Herb finally admitted his actions were not legal, he said no, which I agree with. That's why Daniel Penny was charged with 2nd-degree manslaughter, not 1st-degree, 2nd-degree manslaughter, because they don't believe that it was his intent to kill, but it was still a death, and that's why criminal negligence, homicide, was also one of the charges. Herb, you answered your own question. It took 6 times to answer it because you're not very intelligent, but it took 6 times. No, what Daniel Penny did was not legal. And you're asking me, well, what would you do, Brian? Yes, I think a good Samaritan, the first thing you do is call police, and if there's somebody on the train that wants to try to subdue somebody, you don't put them in a chokehold until they die, Herb. 702-221-7283. Let's go to Darlene. Darlene is next. Hi, Darlene.
Hey, Brian. First of all, I want to say something to Herb. Herb, please go take your medication because you evidently have forgot to take it today. Second of all, I want to talk about your friend David, which I've never heard of him, so I didn't know who he was. Mm-hmm. But David is scared of Donald Trump, period. He's scared of him. Because, like the other guy said earlier, every time you said something, he's going to say the opposite.
Yeah.
Whether it's truth or not. And the reason America is like it is today is because of Donald Trump's standards. He's got these people thinking that that's how the world is now, that they can do what they want, say what they want, murder who they want, and it's okay. Period.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about it.
I completely agree with you, my dear. Great phone call, and I'm with you 150%. I can't speak to the fact whether Herb takes medication or not, but I'll tell you this. He answered his own question. Daniel Penny's behavior was not legal. You can't take matters into your own hands and kill somebody because somebody's screaming and acting irrationally, even if somebody threatens somebody. You can't do that. Let's go to Bob. Bob is next up on PTL. Hey, Bob, what's up?
Hi, Brian. How are you today?
Good.
Have you ever heard the expression that democracy is the tyranny of the uninformed?
I have heard that expression. Yes, sir.
Okay. And the reason I bring that up is because, I look at America today, and I'm in my 80s, okay? And I've seen things change. I've seen Vietnam and all of that, that era, Watergate, et cetera, even 9/11. I've never seen this country so, how can I put it, so torn. It's almost, I can't conceive it being United States anymore. I don't know what the hell it is, but it just seems to me that there's such acrimony that it's beyond my wildest understanding how we've come to this point.
Well, we're headed to a dictatorship. There's no question about that.
Well, the thing, look, if people, this is the thing that blows my mind. If you have a guy like Donald, okay, if people do not like the Democratic platform, they had ample time to find another candidate, a Republican candidate, rather. I'm talking about Republicans now, to fill the void. But they chose Donald Trump.
Well, they
Now,
chose.
I live in,
I would say that, and I have to go to the next caller. I'm up against the clock here, but I would say when you say they chose Donald Trump, certainly wasn't America. It was about 48% of those who voted, give or take. The good news is it's not a mandate. More than half the country still hates Donald Trump, my friend. So if you're just joining us, though, we're talking about Daniel Penny. I don't know why I keep calling him Perry. Daniel Penny. Jury deliberations are underway, and the chokehold of this 30-year-old black man who grew up in New Jersey. 702-221-7283. Let's go to Tyrone. Tyrone is next on PTL. Hey, Tyrone.
Hey, Brian. Good afternoon. Let me say this. Even if he had punched somebody on the subway, that did not entitle the Penny guy to choke him to death. Even as the police, they're required to meet force with equal force.
Yeah,
so if I push a cop.
Yeah, so I hear what you're saying, Tyrone. Here's where maybe I might disagree with you a little bit. Let's just say hypothetically he punches which didn't happen, by the way, but if he punches an innocent Samaritan on the subway, that innocent person absolutely should be in fear for their life, and their life is in jeopardy, because we all know that if you punch somebody, you can kill somebody. But that didn't happen.
Right.
But that didn't happen. We know that he didn't make physical contact with anybody. And listen, if there was physical contact, then I would feel very differently about this case. But there wasn't. This was a deranged man, schizophrenic, mentally ill. He never made physical contact with anybody. And it's not a defense to kill somebody just because he allegedly lunged at somebody or screamed or yelled he was going to kill somebody. You can't kill somebody for that reason. You can't. Now, if he had a gun or a knife, that's a completely different circumstance.
Right. And let me say this. When he called the guy a crackhead with the police, that's called depraved indifference. He showed his indifference to that person's humanity by calling him a crackhead, not calling him a man or a boy, anything. He just called him a derogatory.
It means he doesn't respect life. He doesn't respect his life.
He doesn't respect his life. He doesn't respect that man. Like, he does not recognize.
Can I ask you a question?
As a fellow human being.
If you don't mind me asking you, what is your race? If you don't, because there's a reason why I'm asking.
I'm African American.
Okay, good. So I hear you, my friend. So here's why I want to. That's why I asked, because I wanted to ask you this question. If Daniel Penny was black, and the victim was white, maybe even wearing a MAGA hat, let's just say, how do you think the media would cover this story? And what do you think all those people out there that are defending Daniel Penny? You think they would defend Daniel Penny if he was black?
Let me say this, Brian, and this taps back to your conversation you had earlier about the J6. If Daniel Penny was white, if the J6 people, or Daniel Penny was black, and the majority of the J6 people were black, they would not have made it off the Capitol alive. He would not have made it off that train alive if he had choked some white dude out and killed him. The police would have shot him dead on the platform.
I think you're right. And that's why I ask you that question. I think you're right.
He They would have shot him dead on the platform, and they would have gone out and had drinks afterwards. And that's the same with the J6. If that was few thousand black people marching on the Capitol, they wouldn't have got past the street in front of the Capitol. They would have been mowed down.
Right.
So spare me your outrage, please.
I agree.
But no,
I agree.
Yeah, he wouldn't have made it. He wouldn't have made it off that train alive.
I agree, but
He was black.
you're right, my friend, and I appreciate your perspective, but that's not the reality that we are living in. The reality that we're living in is that if you watch Fox News, they want to show innocent black people, not always innocent black people, they want to show black people committing crimes. They do it nonstop. They want you to believe that black people are all committing crimes and the white people are all the good people and they're all the victims. If you watch Fox News, OAN, or Newsmax, they do that nonstop every day. Every day. But as far as the January 6th criminals, who predominantly were white, last I checked, they're all hostages and they're all patriots. You heard my guest, David Pollock, who believed that most of those January 6th criminals who were charged and convicted are patriots. And we're supposed to be led to believe that Daniel Penny is a hero. He's the opposite of a hero. He's a murderer. And I hope he gets convicted. And it's a horrible, tragic, sad story. But we will continue to cover it. Jury deliberations are underway, and we could have a verdict today, maybe tomorrow, and we'll continue to cover it. Hey, I want to remind all of you guys, and thank you all for tuning in, by the way. You could be anywhere, hopefully on my YouTube page, which is at PTL Radio Show, where you can subscribe for free. Please check out my website, pushingthelimits.live. Again, that's pushingthelimits.live. We sell merchandise up there, PTL gear, and if you enjoy what we do and you want to support what we do, there's a donation button right there on the front page you can click on. It'll take 2 minutes of your time. We appreciate that. And I also want to thank the official gaming bar of the Pushing the Limits radio show. Of course, I'm talking about Jackson's Bar and Grill, located at Flamingo and Jones, where you can win up to $500 in free slot play during the Pass the Puck contest and any Vegas Golden Knights game, including tonight, where I believe the Edmonton Oilers are in town. So please check them out. Jackson's Bar and Grill, located at Flamingo and Jones, the official gaming bar of the Pushing the Limits radio show. If you want to contact me personally, I think the best way to do it, quite frankly, is on my personal accounts on X and, of course, Blue Sky at PTL Radio Show. Thank you for the phone calls. Appreciate you guys joining us. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day.
Have you ever dreamed of having your own radio show or a podcast, but just didn't think it was possible? Well, dreams can come true. Radio U. Radio U is a 5-day course that'll teach you how to acquire your dream show. We'll teach you how to host, how to write commercial, how to